Wow. Okay. Great to see we got a bunch of guys and gals watching already. Um, I was just talking to Rich. We were testing our sound, and they're having this incredible heat wave out in Southern California. He's in Venice Beach, LA area, and he's poor guy, man. I so appreciate him doing this because it's like 1,000 degrees in his house right now, and he's hanging in there like a trooper. So I'm not going to take too much time here. I'm going to bring him on, and we'll get things started pretty soon. Um, Again, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. See if there's anything else I want to mention before I move on to Rich. Um, I think that's it. So thanks for watching. And without further ado, please give a warm welcome, because he's warm, to my good friend Rich Mangicaro.
Hey everybody,
Hey, buddy.
how you doing? Thanks,
I'm
Tony.
doing great. I told everybody what's going on out there with the heat and everything. So thanks again for doing this, man.
Oh,
It's
sure. I'm so glad to do it with you.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it's a
great.
little toasty here. It's kind of unusual for Santa Monica. We don't doesn't really get that warm here that often, But we got one of those days today.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Is it because is the breeze coming off the land versus off the water, or is it like one
yeah,
of those things where
I
yeah,
think so. I think yeah, it's coming from the desert. It's supposed to be like this throughout the entire week this week. So
wow.
yeah, we're a little we're in a pretty severe drought out here. It's a rough year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hope we get some rain, but it doesn't look like we're going to get any. So, but yeah, it's the story living here.
I know, man. I know. I remember we need rain here too. We just got some rain today, and it's the sun's out again. It's beautiful, but it was one of those weird humid days, which you remember from living in New York, where it's just clammy and cloudy,
Yeah,
and then it just sort of opens up, and now it feels great. I think
yeah,
we're gonna get some nice weather. So pal, it's good to see you.
me
I
too.
yeah, setting up the show. I mentioned, we go back a long ways, and by my recollection, we go back to when you started at Paiste around 1987.
Yeah,
I think we met.
right.
Yeah, and uh, and you were with Paiste for 20 years,
Yeah, just
about
shy of
20 years,
20.
just
Yeah,
shy
and
of
you
20
you were
years.
at DW when I started at Paiste.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. We were a couple of young guys, sort of new to the business, and man,
yeah.
a lot of changes since those old days, those early days of our respective careers.
The things we've seen. Yeah,
uh,
yeah. A lot of
oh
changes.
man, I know. And I know I've told you this, and I just want to say it because one of the things that really I appreciate about our friendship all these years that still stays with me is that when I got the job with Zildjian in '89, I remember seeing you at the NAMM show in Chicago, um, the old summer NAMM show, and it was the announcement was in the Upbeat Dailies or one of those magazines with the press releases, and you came over to the Zildjian booth and really genuinely, sincerely congratulated me and said, like, I'm so happy for you, and I remember thinking, like, I'm so glad this, we work for competing companies, but it's we had this friendship for a couple of years before that, and it didn't affect it, and it never did in all the years we worked in the industry, that way.
Yeah, me too. We kind of share a lot of the same. I think we share a lot of the same values and kind of the way we look at the whole thing,
Yeah.
and what we do. And that's one of the things I think we bonded over. Plus, you starting at DW and my history with them, you know, um, it's pretty strong. And I really, in my career, I owe a lot to John Good, a lot, actually.
Yeah.
John has been a dear friend for a long time and has been really in my corner for a long time, not just in this industry, but kind of helped me pave my performing career. And unbeknownst to him, actually, in the way the whole thing went down, which I could tell you about, but it really was. He's a big part of my life and my career,
That's
you know.
great.
So
Does it go? I know I remember when John and I worked together at DW, he was a huge fan of Venice. And
yeah,
is that where it all started when you were
yeah,
playing in Venice? Yeah.
Well, we were, you know, back in the very early days of when I started with Paiste, and we were doing the every year the PIT and Musicians Institute in Hollywood would have their graduation ceremony. So yearly we were, you know, some of us in the industry were asked to present an award at the graduation. So I was one year, both John and I were asked to go up on stage and present an award, and we were there kind of hanging out together and sitting in the audience. And uh, actually, you know, I'm trying to remember if it was at the school. I don't think it was at the school. I think it was actually at the Wiltern Theater that year. So it was in a really nice venue here in LA.
Mm.
So we're doing our thing with the school. We're finishing that up, and John goes, "What are you doing after this?" I said, "I don't know." He goes, "Why don't you come out to dinner, and then I want to take you to see my favorite band, Venice." And this was probably like, um, God, it had to be early '90s. You know, I don't know exact year, but it was early '90s.
Yeah.
And so I went with them, and I'm like, "Who's Venice?" You know, I didn't know Scott Crago at the time.
Wow.
And so we go see this band at this local club, actually right up the street from where I live right now. It's a hardware store now, but it used to be this big cavernous club. And we walk in there, and you know, early '90s, every guy in the band's hair was way down to here. You know, they look completely different than they do now. And they were a staple in Los Angeles. They're a local band
I
that
remember. Yeah.
at the time that John took me to see them, they had just released their first album, and Danny Korchmar produced it. And it had a single on the radio here. And they were a big deal. And it was before they had connected with their following in Europe. So that's when I met Scott Crago. And so Scotty was already signed to DW. He did not have a cymbal endorsement, so I signed him to Paiste. And I don't know if he was with Vic Firth yet, but he's been with Vic Firth ever since. So he's stayed with the same companies ever since he started. But I brought him on board to Paiste, and we became friends. And a couple years later, he saw me play with an original project here in Los Angeles, a really good band that was very close to getting a deal and that whole thing. And it was great. And he loved it so much that he got involved as the producer of the next record. So he produced our album after he'd met us. And then, long story short, Glenn came to him and said, "I need a percussionist." And Scotty goes, "I got the guy." So that's how it all led from John Good, really.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and Scott Crago.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you being a great percussionist, and Glenn being Glenn Fry of the Eagles.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Which
Yeah, he
which
didn't want to do auditions. He had you know, didn't want to go through that. He said, "I just want you to recommend somebody." So Scotty recommended me, and needless to say, I was pretty nervous the first time I went.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I knew all the music, but you know, I knew what to do. But you know, the first day I met Glenn and Joe Walsh was the first rehearsal, just walking in and starting rehearsals with no meeting beforehand.
Yeah.
So it doesn't happen like that very often.
No, it doesn't.
You know,
And it wasn't, and that wasn't an audition, Rich, right? That was like you
no.
came in, you had the gig.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Just, I mean, purely on Scott Crago's recommendation, which, you know, he stuck his neck out. He knew how I played, and it just worked out. I ended up staying for 15 years. So I was with him till he passed away. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it was an amazing gig.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I don't know if a lot of people know that about you, that in addition to, you know, you being an icon in the industry, and I, you know, and I don't use that word freely, but you are. I mean, you've worked for Paiste for almost 20 years. You've worked for Gon Bops for, I think you said 10 years now.
Yep.
And you're a known guy in the drum industry, loved by everybody, and also like a real hot shit musician. That's
I'm a side man, but yeah, I mean, it's
yeah.
I've always been a musician my whole entire life, like you. You know, we all get into this industry. You know, before we got into what we do, we were all players.
Yeah.
You know, you and I have both been playing since we were kids. You know, my first instrument was drum set, not percussion, but I studied percussion in college. You know, and,
Yeah.
but I feel very fortunate. You know,
And so when you moved, and you grew up in Syracuse,
yeah,
in Syracuse. So when you moved out to LA, I take it was like the rest of us, you went out there to be a player,
Yep.
and got into the scene and found your way over to working in the industry.
Yep. Yeah. I
basically.
came out here for, actually the first time I came out here twice. The first time I came out was in 1982. Stayed for a year. I freelanced around town, and I had never finished my degree in percussion. I was going to music school from like 75 to 79. And in the middle of all that, I changed curriculums. I was in music education. I didn't really want to do music teaching, so I changed into music industry curriculum, lost almost a year of credit. So I was a little behind in that. And then I got an offer to go on the road. And it wasn't a national act. It was like a show band. We played Vegas and Atlantic City and all that kind of stuff. So I actually left college and didn't get my degree in 79 and went on the road for 5 years. So I was just touring, playing in hotels, clubs, casinos, that kind of stuff, on drum set and lead vocals. And then I moved to California to pursue music, and was here for a year doing more just freelancing. And I just kind of got a bug to go back and finish my music degree. And that was in 84, 83, 84. So my closest friend from my youth, he's my oldest friend, drummer and music instructor named Jim Ahern. He's from Syracuse. He was a music instructor, a music teacher. He was going to school at Potsdam College up in Potsdam, New York, with Jim Peterzak.
Right. Okay.
So-
I've heard it. I know Jim Ahern. I feel like yeah.
I'm not sure if you met him, but you know Peterzak.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Because when I was in school at Syracuse University, I was studying with Ernie Muskie, who was a student of John Beck's. So that's where the bulk of my drumming and percussion education came from, was Ernie Muskie. When I went back to finish my degree, I went to Potsdam with my friend Jim Ahern to Crane School of Music, and I finished my degree there. And my degree there was in performance. And I did it in 1 year. I did the junior and the senior recital in 1 year. I just wanted to knock it out. So
Yeah.
So I did that. And then I came back here in 86, landed back in LA, got the gig with Paiste in 87. And I got the job with Paiste because I was just thinking I need a supplement to playing, Little did I know it was going to turn into what you and I have had to endure.
I know. It's funny how that road, and no regrets. I'm sure you have no regrets. Yeah. It takes you like you. I mean, I think I consider myself. I think you do too. Pretty fortunate to have worked for good company, and and I was going to say, and I remember when I came out in '85, Steve Edelson was still working for Paiste.
Right.
Until around, I think, 86. And there was a guy before you. I was thinking about this today. Jeff Newhouser. Is that his name?
Jeff was there. Jeff was there for a year, and I replaced him. Yeah. And Edelson was there in the early 80s. He kind of established the Paiste, the early roster. And then I came in and stayed the longest after those guys.
Yeah, I mean, and rest his soul, Steve was, he was great. He was definitely a groundbreaking artist relations industry guy.
He sure was.
Yeah, but you definitely made an impact when you got there. I mean, it was. I think about like the relationship that you had with Jeff Porcaro and still have with Jim Keltner and all those guys out there that are just like the A players out there,
I feel very lucky, like you do, to know all these guys, and I still have that small town boy in me.
Yeah.
So I still pinch myself, even with all this behind me and all the years that we do this. I still pinch myself knowing these people and growing up in a small town, being a drummer and listening to the people that influenced me, and so there's never a day that goes by that I'm not like very thankful, and very thankful to Paiste, because it paved a lot of things for me, and it was a great bunch of years. Great instruments, very creative artisans in Switzerland, highly skilled, highly creative, still are, and very unique I learned a lot. I really learned a lot.
Yeah.
But the artist relations, I had to kind of take that and learn myself. Actually, there wasn't a playbook, as you well know. They
Yeah,
just kind
no,
of
there
throw
is
you
not.
into the fire and go, okay, go do that.
Right,
You know,
right. Yeah.
I mean, I
Yeah.
still recall some of the very first endorsees that I met. When the first couple of weeks that I was there, and to this day, they're dear friends. The first guys that I had to deal with. Um, Alex Klein was one of them. Was a great jazz drummer here in Los Angeles. Mark Herndon from Alabama was one of the very
Yeah.
first people I worked with, and Raphael
They were
Gale.
huge. Yeah.
Yeah, and Raphael Gale was another one who spent a lot of years with Leonard Cohen, amongst a lot of other people. And then Stuart Copeland, actually, and Jeff Porcaro, very early on, who I met when I first started, So,
Wow. That's some
yeah.
great company, man. That's yeah. But I know you're right. It's like that. There isn't a playbook. And if you when you have the right personality and the right temperament, you excel as you do,
And as you did, I mean, we shared a lot of those stories when you were doing the job and dealing with our favorite players on your end, with Steve Gadd and everybody. And
yeah.
still the guys you've become such old dear friends with. Speaking of your old dear friends from Zildjian, my neighbor is Peter Erskine, who lives only a couple of blocks from me. And I got to call him because we used to get together before the pandemic. And there's this great coffee shop right up the street that we would meet at and have coffee. And it was just so great to have that, and up the street. And every once in a
Yeah.
while, we're walking in the neighborhood to get a burrito or something, and I'll see him and Mutzi walking down the street with a food, and it's just great to have him like right here.
Oh, that's
So,
if yeah, you should definitely do that. If I lived in Santa Monica on the west side, I'd probably be bothering Peter a lot and you.
he's so great. I mean,
Yeah,
Peter's just
he's
wonderful, and he's got a beautiful studio, and he's just a groove to hang with.
yeah.
So,
He sure is. He sure is. So so tell me about like because I mean in addition to working in the industry, Paiste and Gon Bops, you've like written for Drumhead Magazine, like all the magazines or most of the major magazines, I think, right? You've done interviews and articles
yeah, yeah, I've
and
written for, I mean, all of the major ones: Modern Drummer, Drumhead, Drum Scene in Australia, uh, Rhythm in the UK. Yeah, um, yep.
and that came about. You just it's something you've always had a passion for, and just because that's not something it's not an easy thing for people to be a good writer. You know what I mean. You've got to know how to edit yourself and know how to write. And I've seen the stuff you've written, and it's excellent. It's
I don't
always
know
really
why that writing came natural to me, but it did. And I think doing what you and I do all these years of working with these great people, I've gotten used to having conversations and learning and listening. I mean, a big part of our job is listening. And so
yeah
the interview side of this came kind of natural. And then writing, I don't know why I've had a knack for that, but I have. And so, yeah, I'm not trying to remember the first magazine. It was probably Modern Drummer. I'm trying to remember when I first started writing, but um, yeah, I don't remember how it actually started, but then it just mushroomed from there. So, and it's so funny when I first started doing it, I was using like, pre-digital, I was using a tape recorder with a mic on the table and trying to catch everything they're saying in a coffee shop with noise around you, uh, and then decipher it and come back and listen and transcribe and make a story out of it. Most of my stuff though was interview style.
yeah
So not like Drum Magazine with exclamation point is not interview style. So my stuff was interview style. So question answer story built off of that. Yeah.
yeah yeah yeah. I no offense to Drum Magazine, but I prefer that style too. I prefer the more sort of question answer interview style and um,
Conversation.
yeah yeah
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
I know that
It's
was
fun.
all
I,
yeah
I miss it. I mean, it's really fun. It's a lot of work, and you're not going to get rich by being a writer for a drum magazine. So, but it's a passion, and I love being involved, with it. And I kind of took that and ran with it in later years, doing my own kind of stuff. Whether it's a podcast now that I'm doing, or web series that I did years ago, where I interviewed people and created a series, that kind of stuff. So kind of took that idea and went with it. I
Yeah.
still do a lot of writing, but it's more for, um, corporate stuff.
Yeah. I don't want to forget to mention this because I made a note because very important that I want just everybody watching this to know that you were a hugely instrumental in getting Joe Piccaro inducted into the PAS Hall of Fame. And I just want to, I think on behalf of all the drummers in the world, thank you for that because, we all love Joe and I'm just so thankful you did it while he was still with us. And
Me too.
yeah, yeah,
That was
it was,
that's probably my one of, if not my most proud moments, one of my most proud moments in all the years that I've been in this industry, and I was trying to figure out all these years that you and I were involved with PAS why he wasn't selected or even asked. I could
yeah,
not figure that out given who he was. So that took 3 years for me to make happen, because he was inducted in 2018 and I started the campaign in 2015 or 16.
hmm
In Wrote the letter to PAS, collected testimonials, uh, wrote a bio. Joe was one of the guys that did a feature article for Drumhead, which also was printed in Drum Scene in Australia. So then I sent my article and I sent testimonials, and I launched a campaign. And he wasn't accepted the first time. I didn't understand that. Then I redid it. I had been told that I have to reapply. So I reapplied the second year. He wasn't accepted again. And I'm at this point, I really couldn't figure it out.
yeah,
And I was saying, well, geez, I started calling all the past presidents and saying, let's get this done before he's not here. God
yeah.
forbid, you know. Uh, and then in 2018, he was accepted. And I don't know why it took that long, John. It should have taken one stab,
Yeah, yeah, I
you
know,
know.
I know.
But I'm really very happy it happened for him. And he was there, and you were there, weren't you? Were you there?
I didn't make it that year, no, and I was
Well,
sorry to miss it.
it was something to see because he and Emil walked up on stage together.
Oh
So,
man,
and Emil, we're talking about Emil Richards, everybody, and Emil and Joe knew each other since they were about 7 years old. That's how
yeah,
long they grew up together in Connecticut. They started in music together. They're best friends all their entire lives. And Emil was inducted into the Hall of Fame years prior
yeah.
to Joe. So here's Joe's chance to go up on stage with his best friend on stage together with his family in the audience. It was really something.
That's, I mean, because
Uh,
Emil passed not probably long after that, right? Maybe a year later.
let's see.
I know we lost Joe last year.
Emil
Uh,
died in 2019, so a year after that. Yeah.
yeah, wow.
So yeah, a year
Rich,
later.
man, bravo, buddy, really for making that happen and that, like you say, that moment of the two of them together. Because I mean,
Oh,
I know their history too. Yeah, they're you know con men.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. The Wrecking Crew.
yeah,
You know.
yeah. I know.
Yeah. It
That's
was.
a, I
I'm really happy it happened.
Yeah, I am, and you're kind of understating it because I remember when we were in touch a number of times during that time, and you expressed some frustration, understandably, and and good for you for just like pursuing it and seeing it through and making it happen. It's
Yeah, and good for PAS for doing it. And thanks to
yeah,
Josh at PAS, he was great. He was really helpful, and
yeah,
the whole team there in 2018 was really a wonderful time. I'm so happy for Joe and his family. So now his family has that plaque, which is great.
that's great. That's
Yeah.
great. I didn't want to. I didn't want us to like sound like a couple of old guys complaining about how
Why not? We are.
we are. You're right. Oh,
We're not
it
that
used.
old though.
No, we're not that old, and we don't look old. We get those good Italian genes, so we're.
I think we
We
look
can.
exactly the same except for a little salt and pepper.
I think so too. Yeah. I just got some of my salt and pepper cut today, hoping it would.
uh,
Didn't really make a difference though. It's still there. It's
yeah, yeah.
it's too much of it. No, but I've done some of these before, and people ask like, um, what's the difference, or what are some of the changes that you've seen from like when you started and where it is now? And I'd love to get your perspective on like how you see what you've seen change, and without us both of us sounding like, doomsday negative, you know doom and gloom guys, but
Well, a lot has changed, as you know, a lot. The over the years, the industry has definitely, um, for lack of a better way to put it, gotten a little bit more corporatized and less individualized family businesses, because it really is many family businesses that make up the percussion industry. Many wonderful, successful family businesses. You know,
yeah,
you know very well, and
absolutely.
they really are a lot of family businesses. And I think that's one of the changes that I've seen over the years, is that there's been a melding of different companies and blending of companies, and more of a corporate, and I say corporate not in a negative way, but a corporate melding of things, and bringing brands together, and joining forces, really. And probably financially, that's a advantageous thing as time has gone on,
Hmm.
but there's a side of the business that changed with that. There's, I think, in the 90s were a pretty special time for the music instrument industry. There was a lot
Yeah.
more, there's a lot more activities with regards to uh, clinics and educational events, and uh, festivals, drum festivals and things. And it just seems like those things were a little bit more prevalent than they are now.
Hmm.
And then jump ahead to the last, at least the last 10 years, 10 to 15 years, social media has kind of taken over uh, the way things are promoted, the way people are seen. Because, when we first started, I mean, you and I remember having physical packages in our office, promotion
Yeah.
packages, physical, sent in the mail, stacks of
Yeah.
bios, CDs,
Yeah.
tape, cassette tapes, where we would have to sift through everything and determine whether or not somebody could come aboard as an endorsee. I think the protocols are similar as far as how we make the decision to bring somebody on, but the criteria and the way they get their visibility has changed. Um, we see a lot of influencers now from social media, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, that have a following that may not have the major credits that the artists that you and I are used to working with have. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or not a good thing. They definitely
Mhm.
influence sales, but the criteria is different now. You know,
Yeah.
I'm old school. I feel like the people that you and I have worked with, and I still work with, that have the credits, that have the history, and have made all these amazing records, and have done all these amazing tours. They've influenced musicians all around the world for a very good reason, obviously.
Right.
And in
Yeah.
turn helped us sell our brand, right? Today, if somebody's got 400,000 followers on YouTube, but no credits on playing with anybody of any credit or name, I'm not sure if it's a good thing or not a good thing. They're helping with sales.
Hmm.
They're turning eyes onto the product, so that's always a good thing. But as far as the foundational side of it, I also think, John, and this is my personal feeling,
Yeah.
the whole television Hollywood industry of competitive music shows
Hmm.
changed the music industry,
Yeah.
and it gave a different impression on what music is. Whether it's The Voice, American Idol, any of these shows, it gave a different impression to the public and to the record buying public of what music is, and who's famous and why are they famous. So
Yeah. I agree. I agree with everything you said, and yeah. I mean, and yeah. I mean, I'll kind of, you know emphasize what you said, that you can't, I guess at this point you can't deny that influencers are promoting brands and helping sell product, which is what you and I, um, what we strive to do when we would sign artists as endorsers of Zildjian or Paiste.
mhm.
Um, but I think I'm with you in terms. I'm old school, absolutely, in terms of like the longevity of an artist, and you know, what legacy are they going to leave? Like if an artist records a record that wins a Grammy, and it's a, you know, it's going to carry on for generations potentially. Whereas, you know, with all due respect to a YouTube influencer or an Instagram influencer, that's a sort of temporary thing,
It's a
really, at
very
the end of the day.
fast-paced,
Yeah,
yeah, very fast-paced temporary jolt, you know.
yeah,
And you just mentioned the Grammys. I mean, that's another thing that's greatly changed in our industry.
yeah, yeah.
If you watch the Grammys, there's a lot of things in my feeling as a musician and as a recording artist is really changed for the worse. You know, um, you don't
Yeah,
see a lot of the great prestigious awards on primetime Grammy night
hmm
anymore. It's become a show. It's become more like a Vegas show, and
yeah,
it's definitely devalued, I think, what it was. I think. The other thing that has changed, John, in our industry is the influence of artist products and signature products specifically on sales.
mm,
And I'm not sure, since you've left the industry, whether or not you're seeing this. I've definitely seen this in the past 10 years. Whereas artist signature products still do help product sales, but not to the extent that I think they did when you and I were doing it in the 90s. They help
mhm.
the overall image of the company's brand, and they bring uh, attention to that company, and that increases sales. But as far as people actually going out and purchasing an instrument that is played by one of your favorite artists, that doesn't seem to be as important as it used to be. And
Mhm.
I just think that's also a nature of the changes of music, you know,
Yeah.
and individuality and self promotion. Everybody wants their own thing and create their own thing, and there's a lot of different vehicles in order to do that now. So I've definitely noticed that change. I'm not sure if you've noticed that at all in your circle.
Yeah, I started to see it actually even before I left, which has been eight
Right,
years now since I've been kind of out of the industry. And
right.
yeah, I would agree. And I think you're right. I think there's a generation now that is almost sort of anti that, you know,
Yeah,
yeah, they really don't want it. And I, you know, I understand that. I get that. Yeah.
but
I mean,
I don't know. With Gon Bops, we make decisions to do that if the product is a great idea, if the artist has a great idea, and it makes sense to blend those two things. And if it comes out as a great product with a great name behind it, then it's really an important thing to do. Uh, and I still think there's a lot of value in it. But uh, yeah, I mean, I know with drumsticks, I was with Innovative Percussion for 10 years. And with drumsticks, we didn't see the sales of the signature products quite as uh, high as just a 5A or a 5B or,
mhm.
uh,
Yeah, absolutely. I agree, and I think you're right. And having had experience with sticks as well, I think that's a great example of it has to be like a really good product. Like if an artist comes up, like Dave Weckl designed a drumstick 30 something years ago. That's a great stick, and he also happens to be Dave Weckl. And Steve Stick too is a, you know,
yeah,
very functional, um,
right,
versatile stick.
right,
And Steve Gadd. So you're right. I think in those cases you've got guys that
yeah,
continue to sell. Peter Erskine has a great ride cymbal drumstick, you know, that again, very
right.
functional. And yeah, but I know just the name alone isn't going to be what it used to be to sell a lot of these products.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all you manufacturers, take note. You're getting some free advice from my pal Rich Mangicaro up here. So now that, and I think I saw something today in the news that you guys have now lifted all your restrictions out in California. Is that correct?
As of today,
As
yeah.
of today. Okay.
Not too sure how I feel about it.
Yeah, I know
Yeah.
what you mean.
I'm not really ready to go into a restaurant personally yet, although I am vaccinated, but I still like to do the outside dining. And yeah, but people are starting to play in clubs. I just got an invite to go see somebody tonight, but I'm not really that keen on going into a club yet. Although I feel like, I really do believe in the vaccine it's very effective. There's a
Yeah.
lot of science and a lot of history behind it. Um, I'm not quite ready there. I guess I'm a little shell shocked still. Just because there's a lot of people in the country that don't believe in the vaccine or won't get it.
Right.
So it's kind of hard to, I mean, if everybody was doing the right thing, it'd be a different thing. I mean,
Yeah.
I understand people not getting vaccinated because they might have an allergic thing or a condition. That I understand, but um, there's enough science out there to give people the right information, you know.
Yeah. Yep.
But
I
we're doing
agree.
really well in California, actually. Los Angeles is doing extremely well with this right now. How
I'm
about where
glad to
you are?
hear that. Yeah, same here. Same here. We lifted, I think, a couple of weeks ago. Um, I think it was just after Memorial Weekend, like all the restrictions were lifted so that it's sort of full capacity again. And we went to a restaurant inside for the first time last week. We'd only been doing an occasional outside dining, and
Yeah.
um, we actually were going to sit outside last Tuesday at this little local place, and they were threatening thunderstorms. So
Oh,
we said, let's go inside, and it was cool. It got a little crowded, and Kelly got a little uncomfortable. I did too. You know, it was a party right behind us, and pretty good sized party, but
so they're not spacing between the tables that much?
not that much, not that
Oh,
much. And luckily, the overlap time wasn't that much. Like we were when by the time they got there, we were easily 2/3 through our dinner,
okay.
so we didn't have to spend too much time there. And but I was asking because I wondered if maybe that was, and you kind of answered it. I wondered if that was going to start to open things up in terms of your playing,
Yeah, I
gigging
mean,
and
there is gigs now. I mean, there are gigs opening. Baked Potato has live shows now,
yeah,
but they're
yeah,
reducing the capacity in the club, and that's what they're doing. They're cutting back on how many people can go in. And they are spacing people out in the club. But you know what the Baked Potato's like. I don't know
I
how.
do.
I don't know. You can get 6 people in that club if you space them out,
I was
right?
gonna say, yeah, I know it's a little place to begin with. So,
Yeah.
but
So, but yeah, no, I'm not that. I don't know. I'm not that excited to go play a gig yet. I'm enjoying being in the studio and working on things right now. So
that's
if
great.
something
And did,
comes along, though, I'll consider it.
yeah, I know what you mean. My band has done a couple of well, we did an outdoor show last week. We're doing one next week and another one the week after that. And there's talk about maybe in the fall doing some indoor stuff, but we're just going to sort of wait and see.
Yeah.
Yeah, not
Yep.
not really comfortable right at the moment with it, but I'll say this, Rich, if things continue to go in the direction that they're going in, and maybe it's the same for you out there, I think by the fall I would be comfortable.
Yeah.
We just last night had the state of emergency lifted in Massachusetts, which is great. Um, so
Yeah.
it's
Me
good.
too. I think me too. I think a few more months and we'll know
Yeah,
more.
yeah,
Things change so quickly.
yeah. Now, and you had told me a while ago that you've been doing some speaking engagements too, and is that like at colleges, or how did
Well, I
that?
was doing a little bit of that stuff years ago, actually. I had a thing called Backlot To Backstage, and I was doing a little speaking thing for the local schools. Like I did it Hollywood High School, and actually it was in conjunction with the Sherry Lansing Foundation, the producer in Hollywood, Sherry Lansing. She
Hmm.
has this Give Back to the Community Foundation, and so I was one of the speakers for that for a little while, where I would get guests and come to the school and talk about the music industry. So, and I would have all kinds of guests. I had actually one time I did it with Steve Piccaro and Joe Piccaro, and we talked about recording with the high school kids at Hollywood High School. And then I've done different things where I've had a couple of film editors go with me, and so across the entertainment industry a little bit. I didn't do it very long, but I did it. I did about, I don't know, 10 schools or so. Um, but I've been actually, in the past 3 years I've been a little bit busier, finishing a web series that I created, and also my record. So and then just recording and working on number 2 now. So
Yeah. Any idea when that's going to be out? Is that still a ways off from being done?
I'm halfway through the second album right now. I should be done by the fall. I hope to have it released. My first one came out in 2018, and solo instrumental that I did. I wrote all the music and played all the keyboards, drums, and percussion. And then I have a
Wow.
great music partner named Jonathan Clark, who I toured with Glenn Fry. He was Glenn's bassist and background vocalist, and he's a brilliant engineer and musician. So he's my co-writer, and he helped me with the first one. We're working on the second one now. And the second record is more of a collaboration. We're co-writing some things, and I've got some guest artists on it. So the bass player for Venice is on one song, and then I'm bringing in some of my old friends from my youth to play on it too. When I toured in that show band thing, the sax player is playing on it.
Great.
And phenomenal chromatic harp player that I toured with Venice with, named Tolak Olestad, who lives in Holland. He's playing on it, and it's exciting to have all these collaborations. The record's going to be called Dialogues for that reason. And so yeah, I'm in the throes of that right now. So
That's awesome, buddy. That's great.
yeah,
You know, I'm jumping around, but
yeah,
a while ago, and I want to tell everybody, especially you, that I was remiss in not having you. We did this show when Robin Flans came out with her book on Jeff. It's About Time, Jeff Porcaro, and it was a total miss to not have you be part of the guests on that show. And we are going to do a part 2, and I think Gary Katz is going to be on it,
great.
and you definitely have to be on it.
Love to.
And hopefully Keltner will want
Yeah.
to come on too. And I saw somewhere, I don't know if I read it or I saw an interview with Jim where he mentioned the last time that he saw Jeff was at a Paiste photo shoot
Mhm.
with you and his dad and Joe and
Amy.
Jim, and there's a picture of the 4 of you guys that I've seen. I get choked up when I see it. I really do. Whenever I see it, and Jim telling the story about that was the last time, and he mentions you. He said there's a photo shoot that Rich put together for
It was
Jeff. And,
the photographer's name was Jack White, who's also Jack White, the drummer, who was the drummer for Rick Springfield in the early hits. Jack White, great drummer from Detroit, Michigan, who
Sure.
lives out here now. Jack was a fantastic photographer, and he was our photographer for quite a while. Actually, he did a bunch of campaigns for us, and that one particular campaign that I was doing was groupings of different people, and it was an artist series. And that grouping that day was Joe and Emil and Keltner and Jeff, the 4 of them.
Emil, right? Yeah.
And it was at Jack's house in Hollywood Hills. He had this beautiful house. At the time, he was married to Katie Segal. So he and Katie had this fantastic house with this big, beautiful living room, really great high ceilings, wonderful photography. So we shot that there. And the 4 of them together was so much fun and so much goofing around. And, Emil was Jeff's godfather, and, all this silliness. And Jim and Jeff were, oldest friends. And we got this fantastic shot. It's such a beautiful shot. And that was the last time that we all saw Jeff. So.
Man, yeah. And I don't mean to bring it up. I just it was such a touching story when I heard Jim talking about it and seeing the picture. And I know you guys were tight.
We were close. Yeah. We had some fun together. Jeff had a way of changing the room when he walked into it.
Yeah.
He had that kind of charisma, and he would literally change the room when he walked in such a good way, and he was a huge ball buster.
I mean,
I'll give you one really great Jeff story. Okay.
Yeah.
When years at Paiste, when we had our sound room at the booth, do you remember when we had live music?
In fact, let me just tell you, I was working at DW, and I was still there in the NAMM of '89. I remember this, and you guys introduced the signature line that year, I think, January NAMM. And I bumped into him in the hallway, and he remembered me from meeting a couple of times, and I was so excited. And he goes, I could tell he was like just being polite for a minute, because he goes, "Hey man, do you know where the Paiste booth is?" And I said, "Come on, I'll take you there. They're in the next room." And I brought him over, and anyway, but yes, I
don't know that. That's great. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, we used to have a sound booth. This is when you talk about our industry, this is when NAMM was incredible. This is when our industry was incredible. Every year we would have a sound booth with live performances at the Paiste Booth, and it was my gig to organize those bands. And so, one NAM I would have, like, I mean, incredible. Like, one year we had uh, Carlos Vega and uh, Mike Pena and David Garfield as a trio. Then
Mm.
one year we had Chad Wackerman with Mike Miller and Doug Lunn on bass. And then one year we had Jeff with his brother Mike on bass. And
Was Lenny playing percussion? Lenny
no,
Castro? No,
and I think
no.
it was also David Garfield. It was a trio again.
Okay.
They're always trios,
Yeah.
except for I'll get to the except for, because except for is really funny. But so the one year that I had Jeff there, we had 3 shows a day or something like that, 3 or 4 shows a day in this room. And that one weekend, I'll never forget. We get there, we're getting ready to get things set up for the first day, and it happened to be Super Bowl weekend. And the NAMM show starts on Thursday, so we're getting closer to Sunday, and Jeff goes, "Manj," he used to call me Manj. He goes, "Manj, where's the TV in the room?" I go, "What?" He goes, "Where's the TV for the Super Bowl, man? Where's the seat? Where's the TV?" I go, "I don't think we're going to have that." He goes, "Oh, man." He was not happy that we weren't playing the Super Bowl in the room, And
Oh,
that same Sunday, Super Bowl Sunday, he comes up to me, and I would introduce the band in between, the sets. And he would always be behind me with a stick, poking me, going, "Hurry up," when I'm introducing them. And just, because he used to bust me all the time. But at one point, before one of the sets, he goes, "Hey, listen, I got this guy I want to introduce you to that I want to play. It's Abe Laboriel's son." I go, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah, he's 16. He's about ready to go to Berkeley. You got to hear him." And we're talking about Abe Laboriel Jr. So this was the first time I'd met Abe Jr. before he'd gone off to Berkeley. And that's when I signed him to Paiste, when he was that young. I had to go through his dad to do it. And we brought him on board at that weekend.
yeah. I remember you guys got him really young because
Yeah.
by the time he got out of Berkeley, he was instantly like the guy.
Well,
Yeah.
thanks to Jeff. That's how I
Wow.
I knew who Abe Laboriel Sr. was, never really hung with him. I met him through Jeff at the Baked Potato, but never met him. So when I signed his son, and we became really close friends. Um, and then Abe Jr. became who he became. Um, Another quick story. There was
That's a great signing, man.
it was a yeah. So years later, Abe Jr.'s got the gig with Paul McCartney, and I get a call from his father and from him and saying, "Hey, what are you doing this weekend? We're going to go see Steps Ahead at USC. You want to go with us?" And so I ended up going with just the two of them to see Steps Ahead at USC at the theater at the college there. I'll never forget that experience. It was like I'm sitting with these two guys watching one of my favorite jazz groups. I don't know if Peter was playing. I'm trying to remember. I'd have to ask Peter. It could have
Yeah.
been Peter.
It probably was Peter. I mean, I think Steve Smith he played for a minute with them,
It's probably
but
Peter, yeah.
it's
Because I
probably
remember
Peter.
Steve Smith played him. I don't remember if I think it was pretty sure it was Peter, but I'll never
Yeah.
forget sitting in that audience, the two of them next to me, and just pinching myself again, small town
Yeah.
Syracuse coming out of me going, "Wow, look at this. I'm so fortunate," And it was really great to share that with them, because Abe Senior, when he gets excited, he's jumping all over the place,
Yeah.
and it was like that. It was great.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
so cool.
yeah,
You
it was
know,
great.
I was going to say, and I'm sure people ask you all the time, and knowing you, I already know the answer to this, but um, people ask like, what it's like to meet guys of that level or work with them and deal with them, and I'm sure you'd agree, it's you being you and just treating them like regular humans. Do you know what I mean? It's like I know what you're saying because I've like driven home from gigs at times or been somewhere and gone like, wow, I can't fucking believe I just was in the same room with these guys, or just this just happened. Um, but it's funny how when you've done that job as long as you've been doing it, you you immediately can go to that default right way to be versus how the wrong way, how other people can kind of do it the wrong way, I guess, if
I
that
think
makes
that
sense.
I think, thank you. I mean, I feel like, yeah, they are just people, but they're incredibly talented people. And there's a place for admiration. And then there's a place for getting down to business and taking care of things. And I happen to be pretty OCD. So I like to keep things organized and, you know, so I think that helps in this kind of a job because, as you know, there's a lot of multitasking. There's a lot of balls in the air all the time.
Yeah.
You have to
Yeah.
keep really, really solid record keeping, and you, I mean, doing artist relations, you're dealing with every level of player, and they're all important. You know, I mean, in 1 hour of our work, we're going to be talking to, you know, a lot of different people, and they could either be on stage at Madison Square Gardens or in a club, and they're all important, and what they're doing is important, no matter how famous they are. So you treat everybody with respect because they're making a living doing that, you know. And I think that also because you and I came into this as drummers and as professional musicians prior to getting this gig, that gave us a foundation of how to do this. I think it helps,
Yeah.
you know. But I think also keeping yourself in check because, uh, you know, I just feel very lucky, you know.
Yeah. And I think, like yourself, I always felt that um, you've got, you know, one of the key things is just is always being honest and never, you know, never promising something that you can't do. You
Right.
know, it's you and I have known people in the business that, you know, it's easy to say yes to everybody, to everything. The hard thing is to say no, but still have that respect and still,
Yeah.
you know, have somebody understand why you can't do something for them, which can be the case sometimes, you know. And
Yeah. Right.
um, yeah, and I think
The difficult part. Yeah.
that's the difficult part. Yeah.
Because it's not, you know, endorsements. Uh, it's not what everybody thinks it is. I mean, I wrote that article for Modern Drummer and for Percussive Notes about what is an endorsement, you know, because really an endorsement is an extension of the sales force, extension of sales efforts, you know. So,
Right.
you know, it has to make sense in that regard, as well as, I mean, it's a two-way street, you know. So,
Absolutely. Yeah. No. Exactly. It's got to be reciprocal. It's got to be about, you know, promoting the product, the brand, as well as supporting the artist. It's all going to go. It can't be a one-way street. Um, just the artist getting whatever they want and you not getting anything back for it, and vice versa.
yeah.
Yeah. We could talk a long time about that stuff, but
Yeah, we could.
we've been really good about not naming any names and not telling any incriminating stories. So that's good.
And we could.
And we could.
But it's funny, you know, we've shared a lot of the same friendships over the years, and a lot of the same people, and you know, I've met a lot of the great people that I've met through you as well. You know, some of the Zildjian artists that I didn't get a chance to work with, I met through you, and like Elvin Jones, you know,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
you know, those kind of names. You know, I say his name and I just go, I can't even believe that I met him. I can't even believe it. You know, somebody that's such a, to me, one of my biggest influences.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the part that I know you and I can speak from both of us that we feel so lucky. You know, that
Absolutely.
we know these guys. You know, and could have had just a sliver of something in their career. You know,
And you know what, I'm glad you said that, Rich, because I didn't want to harp on that too much about, um, you know, when I mentioned how things, you know, when I said, what are your thoughts about how things have changed? But
yeah,
like when we got into this in the 35 years ago, you know, a lot of these cats were still around, and it was, it really was different. I mean, I don't mean to, you know, I don't mean to say, it's not to say that it's better or, you know, and it's worse now, but I mean, these guys were roaming the earth, and you know, guys like Jeff and guys like Carlos Vega and Elvin Jones, and you know, and those moments that we had with them, you know, Tony Williams, were just,
yeah,
I'm like you. I mean, I still, now at my age, I think back and go, I'm so glad that I was around, that I got into the industry when I did, and I was
me
there
too.
for that time, you know, and you were close with um, Tumas Paiste.
Mhm.
Is it Tumas? Yeah,
So
and
it's
me
almost,
with Armin Zildjian,
yeah,
and I think they both passed away around the same time, right?
yeah,
Crazily,
yeah,
which yeah, it's but to have that, to know that you got to work closely with the not the founder, but same Armin wasn't the founder of Zildjian, but one of the real pioneers of Paiste and me with Armin Zildjian. It's those are really precious memories that we get to have, and
really
it's a
are.
blessing.
No kidding. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, a lot of those people are not with us any longer that started this industry, as you well know. Uh, the icons of the
yeah,
names of the companies, you know.
I know,
So it's
I know.
definitely different now, you know. There's still a lot of really great things happening. Um, so
Yeah,
I think
yep,
that endorsements are still very valid, and relationships between the player and the company is still very valid and important. Uh, and in some respects, even more mutual in some way. There was a lot more flexibility and financial flexibility back in the 90s when we were doing it in the 80s for companies like ours to promote these artists.
hmm
There wasn't social media promotion that we were doing a lot of that, you know. And these days, it's more of a mutual effort.
right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, well
Yeah,
said. Yep,
yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, there really was more of a kind of like developing artist sort of
yeah,
program back in the days where you or I would sign someone that we knew, like Abe Laboriel, who we knew doesn't have a gig yet, but man, this guy's a monster. He's gonna have a big gig. You could do that, and I think now I don't know, I don't do it anymore, but I think there's more of like an emphasis on proven commodities one way or another, whether it's social media or
yeah.
what kind of a following do they have, and
Yeah, I think almost back in the day, we were more talent scouts than they are today, artist relations people.
yeah,
Our job was more of a talent scout. You had to kind of look into the future a little bit and see the potential of somebody before you bring them in. And I know Zildjian was very effective at that. Paiste was as well, and
yeah,
of seeing the future stars. Uh, it's the same when I started working with Danny Carey from Tool, or and you with any of the guys, even Josh, or
yeah, yeah.
you know, yeah,
You're right. No, that's exactly it. I mean, that was when I was at DW, same thing. It was the idea was artist relations was about that. You were hired because you're supposed to have your finger on the pulse and have a feel for being a musician, being a drummer yourself. Knowing good drummers
right,
and a lot of times it's crystal ball work, as we know,
yeah,
but like you said, but recognizing a standout player and not letting him get away
right.
and hoping you can make that happen. Yeah. No. But I just got to say it. It's you're. I'm glad that you're still in the business and um, at Gon Bops, and you represent to me what I remember, like our generation of artist relations guys being. Like of that. Cut from that same cloth, so to speak.
Thanks, man.
You know,
And
when we
Gon
when we
Bops is really a very interesting, creative, and innovative brand, and uh, staying true to the authenticity and the heritage of the instrument, which is exciting to me, and a great team behind it. Andy Zildjian, uh, the head of Sabian, uh, has a lot of foresight in this, and he really sees this very, very well, and he saw the potential of the brand because he acquired it over 10 years ago
Mhm.
from DW, and it's thriving. We're having fun creating new things all the time, and we have great artists, and just like it's always been the past 35
Yeah.
years for me, it's still inspiring to get up every day and work with the artists that I work with, whether it's Alex Acuna or Lenny Castro or any of our artists, any of our great artists.
Yeah.
They really are playing the instrument because they love it, and they're helping us move the brand forward, and that all has not changed, and that's all still the same, and it still feels like the old days at times when it comes to that side of it. You know,
Mhm.
oh, we have an idea for a product. Let's create this product. Let's work together on it. Let's do product development. Let's promote it. Let's come up with a cool marketing thing. Because I do all of the video, most of the video creation and editing for the company, and now with the way things have been this past year, we've had to dive into the thing that you've delved into here, which is this kind of promotion. So that's fun because I'm doing the interviewing now in two different ways. One, like you're doing right here with Gon Bops, called Gon Bops Live, which is a live to Facebook and YouTube with our artists, and it's usually a grouping of some kind. And we have a fun conversation, hang out, like we're all hanging out. And then we also have a podcast, which is an audio show, a radio format style. And I'm doing that for Gon Bops. And that's, you find that on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And that's a one-on-one, very in-depth interview style thing, which has also made me learn new tricks, right? I'm going to learn editing and learn. It's because when you listen to a podcast, it's something I didn't know, because I love podcasts and I listen to them. You don't know how much post goes into that, how much editing time goes into it. Hours and hours. Because if you just took the recording that you do of the conversation and you just put that up, there was a lot of stuff in there that you shouldn't be putting in there. Not that it's, maybe nasty or whatever. There's a lot of, how conversation can be.
Sure.
It can be tangents. It can be saying the same thing over and over again, or stating your point and then stating it 3 or 4 more times. So you have to, as an editor, know how to get it in and make it flow so it sounds like a conversation. And that's something I had to learn. So that's fun.
Yeah, that's hard work, man. Yeah,
it's fun. It's hard work. It's definitely hard work. It's forced me to get better at editing and learning Logic, and whether it's Logic or you use Pro Tools or whatever you use out there. It's one of the things I could say to everybody that's watching today is get good at learning a DAW. Get good at learning how to record yourself. Get into it, because it's so fun to learn how to record yourself, how to engineer, and how to come up with your own product. I can't stress that enough.
That's great. That's great advice. That's really great advice.
Yeah.
Well, buddy, I know you're sweating like crazy there.
I'm okay. The fans are going. I'm surprised you can't hear these fans. Yeah, it's okay.
Good. Well, no, the sound is fine. So, but I want to thank you for doing this. Thanks for. I know it was a sort of last minute thing, and I really appreciate you, working with me on your schedule on this.
I appreciate you having me, brother.
Absolutely, pal. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I guess in closing, I just want everybody watching, if you can check out Rich on it's Gon Bops Live on Facebook.
Gon Bops Live. That's on YouTube and Facebook. Or you can check out the podcast is called The Percussion Loft, and you can find that on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It's called Percussion Loft. Or my website, my name, richmangicaro.com. That's where I post what's coming up or what's happening, or when I'll release the next album, that kind of stuff.
That's great. Great. Cool, brother. Been great chatting with you. Hang tight for 1 second. I'll end the stream, and then we'll hang in the room for a minute and say our goodbye there.
Thanks for having me. Thank you, everybody.
Big hand for Rich Mangicaro, everybody. And I got the gong that Vic Firth gave me right there.
Oh, look at that. With a hole in it.
With a hole in it.
That's an Emil Richards thing.
Okay. I didn't know the story behind that, but that's probably why. Yeah.
Okay, so extremely quickly, that hole was Emil Richards' idea, because he said it was too difficult to bow a gong going around the back of the gong, so he had us drill the hole right through the gong itself. So when he was in the studio and the cue and the red light went on when they were recording soundtracks, you put the bow in there and just go zip, and that's what that's for.
Wow, I didn't know. Okay.
And Emil swore that also helped the gong open up faster. So
it does open up pretty quick. It's pretty. I don't have a mallet, but it does open up pretty quick.
That's why they have the hole in it.
Yeah. Wow. Thanks, pal. That's good. Sure. Good information. All right. Thanks, Rich. Hang tight for 1 second. Everybody, thanks for watching. Next Tuesday, the 22nd, Dave DeCenzo, 12 p.m. Eastern time, I think. And Thanks again for tuning in today.
Thanks,
All right.
John.
See you. Thanks, Rich. See you in a minute.
Bye-bye.